Today at the National Press Club, Australian Federal Police Commissioner Krissy Barrett. Commissioner Barrett became the first woman to lead the AFP earlier this month and is focused on future-proofing the police force and promoting an inclusive workplace. Commissioner Barrett with today's National Press Club address.
Hello and welcome to the National Press Club and today's Westpac address. My name is Tom Connell. I'm the club's president and also an anchor at Sky News Australia. Today's guest is the new Australian Federal Police Commissioner. I think we can still call her new, Krissy Barrett. She's the 9th AFP Commissioner, notably the first woman as well to lead the AFP, which started back in 1979, so coming up towards 50 years, starting of course after a review post the 1978 Hilton bombings. Previously, she's led the National Security Portfolio as Deputy Commissioner for National Security, responsible as well for monitoring threats to the Australian government, critical infrastructure and terrorism environment, as well as the internal integrity and security of the AFP. She has some 30 years overall of experience. Today, she'll talk about many things, including the AFP's efforts to dismantle online criminal networks that are trying to radicalise vulnerable children and no doubt many other issues facing the nation. Please join with me and welcome Commissioner Krissy Barrett.
Thank you and good afternoon everyone. Thank you for coming today, and I would particularly like to start by thanking those who I have personally invited today, including Stephanie Foster, Secretary PSM, thank you for coming. Director General Mike Burgess, AM, Australian Security Intelligence Organisation, Acting Director General Catherine Byrne, APM, Australian Secret Intelligence Service, Commissioner Anne Hollins, National Children's Commissioner, thank you, Co-CEO Peter Wertheim, AM, Australian Council of Executive Jury, thank you, CEO Jackie Borland from Aspect, Professor Tom Karma, AO Community Leader, and a special shout out also to Tom's daughter, who is an amazing young leader in the AFP and is also here with us today. Grace, thank you. Dr. Jamal Rifi, AM Community Leader, thank you, and General Manager Khalid Musa from the Australian National Imams Council. I also do want to very much thank New South Wales Police Force Commissioner Mal Lanyon for being here today. Mal, who runs the biggest police force in Australia, was sworn in around the same time as me. In fact, I think the same day. I'm really optimistic, Mal, about what we can achieve together, so thank you for being here today. So today I want to have a candid and open conversation with Australians to inform them about the risks they need to know about and how the AFP will disrupt and combat these threats through our task forces, our operations and our capability. Some of this conversation will be confronting, but as Commissioner, I want to empower communities by providing information they need to know. One of my priorities is to protect vulnerable communities and our future prosperity, which includes our youth and our future generations. For many, including busy parents, and I am one of them, trying to navigate the two worlds our kids live in, the physical and the virtual, is like trying to understand two languages, two different friendship groups, two sets of norms. And then there's the never-ending battle to protect our curious kids from mis and disinformation and the dangerous online echo chambers that offer few alternative views. It's no wonder many parents and others are exhausted and drained by the online world. If it used to take a village to raise a child, because of advances in technology, it now takes a country to keep them safe. In an unpredictable world where so many Australians are looking for answers and assurance, I say to you as your AFP Commissioner, you can trust the AFP. You can rely on me and the very dedicated members of the AFP to provide relevant, timely and truthful information about what is happening in the world and how to best mitigate these criminal threats. And I want Australians to know we will be with you. You are not alone in this, because the AFP exists to protect Australia. We exist to serve you. We are your AFP. Today I will outline a worrying threat that we are still learning about in Australia and why we all need to be vigilant. There are decentralised online crime networks and loosely affiliated individuals in Australia and offshore who are glorifying crime online, such as sadistic online exploitation, cyber attacks, and violence. These crimes are now spilling into the real world, and they have real-world consequences. While these networks do not have a centralised hierarchy or a single ideology, they are prolific and are attracted to violent extremism, nihilism, sadism, Nazism, and Satanism. They are crime-fluencers and are motivated by anarchy and hurting others, with most of their victims preteen or teenage girls. These networks, which I will not name because I will not validate the notoriety that they crave, are a new and disturbing front in traditional gender-based violence. Overwhelmingly, the perpetrators are young boys and young men from Western English-speaking backgrounds, and overwhelmingly, young girls are the victims, and they are being intimidated, exploited, and controlled. Typically, these young girls have low self-esteem, may have mental health disorders, may have a history of self-harm, eating disorders, or other attributes that may lead them to seek connection online. This can make them more vulnerable to being targeted directly by these networks. The motivations of individuals within these networks is not financial, nor is it sexual gratification. This is purely for their amusement, for fun, or to be popular online without fully understanding the consequences. These groups have a similar culture to multiplayer online gaming culture, and they hunt, stalk, and draw in victims from a range of online platforms. To be accepted into these networks, the perpetrators often must have to pass a test or undertake a task, such as providing videos of the self-harm of others or other gory content. This is where mainly vulnerable girls are being victimised. The young men groom victims online and then force them to perform serious acts of violence on themselves, their siblings, others, even their pets. In this new twisted type of gamification, perpetrators reach a status or new level in their group when they provide more content, showing more extreme acts of depravity and sadism. And in some cases, perpetrators trade their victims with each other, just like an online game. Once traded, a new perpetrator can control their new victim. In Australia, 59 alleged offenders have been identified as being members of some of these prolific decentralised online crime networks. The AFP, working with law enforcement partners in Australia and overseas, has moved quickly against offenders, resulting in 9 international and 3 domestic arrests. In Australia, those arrested were aged between 17 and 20 years old. Our actions have also stopped the ongoing victimisation of children in Australia. We have provided information to education departments, state and territory police colleagues, and Commonwealth agencies to help them also navigate this trend. Internationally, information provided by the AFP has contributed to arrests for murder, inciting suicide, inciting harm online, violent sexual offences, possession of child abuse and child sexual abuse material, as well as cybercrime offences such as unauthorised access of data and attempted extortion of organisations. A subgroup within the Five Eyes Law Enforcement Group has also been established to target these groups. And as a priority under my commissionership, the AFP will set up Task Force Pompolid to use the full powers of the AFP to target these offenders. The task force's mission is to identify, disrupt, and dismantle those online criminal ecosystems that target Australians, wherever they operate, however they hide, and whoever they harm. We will protect victims, we will arrest offenders, we will expose facilitators, and we will remove anonymity that shields offenders from law enforcement. Additionally, clever AFP members working with Microsoft are developing a prototype AI tool that will interpret emojis and Gen Z and alpha slang in encrypted communications and chat groups to identify sadistic online exploitation. This prototype aims to make it quicker for our teams to save children from harm much earlier. I know it seems like a never-ending battle to keep our kids safe, but to parents and to carers, please know you are not doing this by yourself. And there are some simple things that you can do. Let kids know they have the right to feel safe online. And if something feels uncomfortable, they can leave a chat at any time and tell a safe adult. You can encourage safe conversations by talking regularly about online activities and apps, encouraging critical thinking, and reassuring kids that they won't be punished for coming forward if they think they have done something wrong. Also, you can look out for warning signs that include self-harm, changes in eating or sleeping habits, sudden withdrawal from family, friends or activities, secret behaviour, use of extreme language, symbols, and rejection of previously held morals. Importantly, there are really practical and easy resources available, including how to make a report about child exploitation at the AFP-led Australian Centre to Counter Child Exploitation website. That's www.acce.gov.au. Together, we must work to protect our kids from a range of influencers and influencers, including those radicalising our youth. From January this year until 21 October, there have been 10 investigations and 4 youths charged with Commonwealth terrorism-related offences. And since 2020, 48 youths aged between 12 and 17 years have been investigated by joint counter-terrorism teams, with 25 charged with one or more Commonwealth terrorism-related offence. Of those, 54% identified as being religiously motivated, 22% as ideologically motivated, and 11% had a mixed or unclear ideology, with 13% still yet to be determined. However, we are now recording a growing trend towards ideologically motivated, mixed or unclear motivation. Almost all the youth identified in the caseload displayed early indicators of radicalisation to parents, educators, and/or healthcare professionals, and in most cases, social media or online gaming have been used to radicalise or for a young person to flag their intent to commit a terrorist act. In 2022, the Joint Counter-Terrorism Team investigated a 14-year-old who had nationalist and racist violent extremist ideology. The investigation started after they used a Snapchat account to post issue-motivated violent extremism. A tip-off outlined how the 14-year-old, who had access to firearms and explosives, was planning a school shooting in Australia. A search warrant executed at the time of the youth's arrest resulted in the seizure of a tactical vest, a ballistic helmet, and extremist-type drawings. The youth, charged with using a carriage service to make threats and advocating terrorism, was sentenced to a 2-year good behaviour bond and 12 months probation. Some gaming and social media platforms are creating a permissive environment for youth to promote and harbour extremist violent material. And this is contributing to the desensitisation of violence, especially for youth who are vulnerable or who feel alienated. I know many parents, governments, agencies, and leaders in our community are working hard to address these issues, and the programs and the conversations they are having are invaluable. But as Commissioner, I want to add value in another way. The AFP has tasked a senior operational psychologist to undertake analysis of the 48 youth matters to help identify trends, anomalies, and behaviours. This includes exploring their use of online platforms, social media, and gaming, their online and community networks, their vulnerabilities and strengths, any prevalence of mental health issues or neurodiversity, their motivations, ideologies, and personal experiences, and their prior interactions with other agencies and stakeholders. This will help better understand how youth are being influenced and radicalised, and so importantly, how we can prevent it as early as we possibly can. I want to find solutions that help our youth become resistant to radicalisation and the effects of violent extremist material. And I want us to do that together as a whole of society effort, especially as we invest in and protect our social cohesion. Today, I'm announcing an AFP Social Cohesion Consultative Board that will bring together community leaders and youth and non-government organisations for the purpose of crime prevention, education, partnerships, and agreed solutions to wicked offences such as human trafficking, hate crimes, youth radicalisation, sextortion, and foreign interference. I plan to establish the board by the first quarter of next year, and early next year I will open nominations on the AFP website. When I said earlier that I wanted to have productive conversations with the community, this is another example. By bringing people together, especially people who generally are not in the same room as each other, the AFP has an opportunity to be more effective in protecting Australians and our sovereignty. So today I'm putting out the call for leaders of faith, youth leaders, mental health experts, diaspora groups, those with connection to Indigenous Australians, not-for-profit groups, people that would see value in contributing to an AFP consultative board. I'm looking for solutions that find common ground by using trusted community voices to take a leadership position that prevents crime and protects people who do not traditionally trust police. The board will work closely with the AFP's community liaison teams, and with us today are two members of our community liaison teams, Moody Rashid and Anissa Sharif, who spend their working days and often weekends attending community meetings and outreach events. They deliver important information sessions and crime prevention education on serious issues that affect our called communities and our diaspora. Their invaluable work cannot be measured. And today, Moody and Anissa, I would like to personally thank you for the integral work you and your teams do and for exhibiting the heart and character of the AFP with such humility and belief. Thank you. You've been building trust and support in communities at a really critical time. Since COVID, trust in some traditional institutions like policing has declined. That's why the 9 policing Peelian principles, first established in the 19th century, must continue to be at the heart of law enforcement. And I want to read you 2 of those principles today. The first one, to always recognise that the power of the police to fulfil their functions and duties is dependent on public approval of their existence, actions and behaviour, and on their ability to secure and maintain public respect. And the second one, to maintain at all times a relationship with the public that gives reality to the historic tradition that the police are the public and that the public are the police. Those principles are about trust. We need that trust and collaboration with our communities more than ever, as criminals and events offshore impact our country in ways that we have never experienced before. Our region is facing intense strategic competition, and some nations criminals and individuals are more willing to test the resolve of democracies and our social cohesion. For example, an individual we suspect is responsible for a number of tobacco-related arsons in Australia is a person of interest in the investigation into the alleged politically motivated arson attack on the Adass Israel synagogue. That person is a national security threat to this country. Of all the alleged criminals accused of threatening Australia, he is my #1 priority, and I have tasked my most experienced criminal hunters to target him. Because of the challenges and new threats before us, I have shifted the AFP's mission statement to defend and protect Australia and Australia's future from domestic and global security threats. This new posture requires the AFP to supercharge our global operations and emphasise that the AFP is a national security agency. The AFP will be unwavering in protecting Australia's sovereignty. That means that under my commissionership, the AFP will take more deliberate and active actions with overseas law enforcement partners. Where we have members posted to a country, we will identify opportunities to act against criminals who threaten both countries. I want to stop criminality in the country it originates in. This is cost-effective, but more importantly, it is safer because it stops crime from reaching our shores. And let me give you an example of what this really means in practicality. For more than 25 years, the AFP has cultivated an enduring partnership with Colombian law enforcement. Colombia produces about 70% of the world's cocaine, and drug cartels try to send many tons of cocaine and other illicit substances to Australia every year. Our AFP members in Bogota, with Colombian law enforcement, have deployed to remote parts of the Colombian jungle to deliberately destroy cocaine production laboratories. The AFP has had enough of crime gangs targeting Australia, and where we lawfully can, we will work with local law enforcement to target criminals in their own backyard. Just in the past couple of years alone, the AFP Colombian cooperation has seized more than 8 tonnes of cocaine. We will also protect those law enforcement agencies for helping us. The AFP in Colombia has expanded its operations to target narco-terrorist groups responsible for violent attacks against Colombian police and military personnel who are engaged in counter-narcotic efforts. In one operation, the AFP helped authorities seize 295 military-grade grenades, 200 detonators, 2 firearms and ammunition, weapons typically used to target and kill Colombian law enforcement officers. We will also be more ambitious in how we offer our capabilities to multilateral joint investigation teams, such as those coordinated by Europol. By doing this, we access new capabilities, new intelligence, as well as leveraging the combined strength of like-minded partners to better protect Australia, our region, and communities across the world. This tenacious reputation, our unique capability, and our willingness to help are reasons why law enforcement in our region ask us for assistance. In the wider Asia region, the AFP is renowned for identifying children who are victims of child sexual abuse and those who perpetrate these crimes. The next few lines of this address are confronting, but they are really hard to hear, but they are really important. They do, however, highlight how we use our resources and how the AFP will use our technology and capability to protect our region for the benefit of humanity. This year, the Royal Malaysia Police, with the assistance of the AFP and other law enforcement partners, identified an alleged international network of pedophiles sharing child exploitation material online. One suspect is accused of the most heinous of crimes, buying infants of Malaysian and Indonesian descent for sexual exploitation. 20 children have been identified or rescued as a part of this ongoing investigation. Unfortunately, 2 children are believed to be deceased, after alleged extended periods of abuse, and a further 2 children purchased by the suspect remain unaccounted for. The AFP is leading efforts to access the suspected evidence on a phone seized from the alleged offender, and will work with partners to determine if any Australians are connected to this alleged pedophile network. Importantly, we will provide support to our members who must watch this horrific material. It is an absolute tragedy that viewing this material is in someone's job description, in anyone's job description. Our victim identification members, including those at the AFP-led Australian Centre to Counter Child Exploitation, are awe-inspiring, and they are motivated by helping the most vulnerable who are being brutalised in unspeakable ways. If you needed just one reason to be proud of the work we do, that certainly would be the one example. However, as you are hearing, the breadth, depth and complexity of the actions we take highlight our unique role in Australia and offshore, and of the AFP's footprint across the world, where we have more than 200 members posted in more than 30 countries. Our work in the Pacific is indispensable. While the AFP still undertakes capability building and training in the Pacific, we continue to work in partnership with Pacific policing organisations to meet old threats and also emerging risks. In February, the Samoa National Computer Emergency Response Team issued a threat advisory about the activity of a sophisticated cyber group and the risk they posed to networks hosted in the Blue Pacific. This cyber hacking group has previously targeted the US and Australia and has recently been observed conducting operations directed at sensitive networks administered by Pacific Island nations. In response, through our police partnerships and our Cyber Safety Pacifica program, we supported the Samoa Police Service to establish a dedicated cybercrime unit. Samoa's cybercrime unit will use new digital forensic capabilities and will prevent, detect and investigate cybercrimes by working with local and international partners. Today, I can also reveal Task Force Thunder, a standing operation that will focus on all crimes, including cybercrime, illicit importations and human trafficking through our region. Task Force Thunder will target illicit commodities and the forced movement of people through the Pacific. In the Pacific, there are 29 transnational crime units, of which, supported by the AFP, is the network that provides central coordination of transnational crime intelligence. Crimes detected through Task Force Thunder will be provided to these units, enabling us to work together to target and charge offenders. The driving force behind these operations and these task forces that I've spoken about are the dedicated members of the AFP. They are smart, they are hardworking, and it highlights why we are one of the best law enforcement agencies in the world. Today, I'll give you a few examples of their miraculous work, including the efforts of one of our data scientists, who is fast becoming a crypto-safe cracker. During a protracted investigation, the AFP identified a well-connected alleged criminal who we suspected had stockpiled cryptocurrency from selling a tech-type product to alleged criminals around the world. The accused criminal is incredibly bright. He's in his early 30s, but he was certainly no alleged Gucci gangster. He lived a frugal life while living with his mum and dad. During a search warrant at the alleged offender's home, our digital forensic team identified password-protected notes on his mobile phone. Our members accessed the notes on his phone and found an image on his device displaying random numbers and words. The numbers were divided into groups of 6, and there were more than 50 variations of the number groups. Our digital forensics team determined it could be related to a crypto wallet, but the accused allegedly refused to hand over his passwords for his crypto wallet, which is a Commonwealth offence that carries a penalty of 10 years imprisonment. We knew if we couldn't open the crypto wallet, and if the alleged offender was sentenced, upon release he would leave prison a multimillionaire, all from the profits of organised crime. For our members, That was not acceptable. So the task was assigned to one of our unassuming yet incredibly talented data scientists who kept looking and looking at the number sequences. He knew that something was not right. And then he had one of those scientific epiphanies. He realised the alleged offender had tried to create a crypto booby prize in how the numbers were presented. Our data scientist then removed the first number of each number sequence and then was able to decode the right sequence of numbers into a 24-word recovery seed phrase. That opened the wallet, which had a whopping $9 million in it. What made you think to remove the first number of each number sequence? His supervisor asked him. He replied that some of the number strings felt wrong and they looked like they were not computer generated. He said they looked like a human had modified the sequence by adding numbers to the front of some sequences. How amazing is that? And it was not a one-off for this member. He recently did it again with another wallet using different methodology, recovering more than $3 million in crypto. To me, this highlights that while computer power is essential, it's not always as creative and innovative as a human. The crypto's been restrained by the AFP-led Criminal Assets Confiscation Task Force, and if a court orders the crypto to be confiscated, the money will be directed to a Commonwealth account. And the funds from that account are redistributed by Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke to fund various crime prevention measures to help keep Australians safe. In another example of smart members finding solutions to new age policing problems, another data scientist has developed an AI tool that identifies how criminal groups are connected based on who they communicate with and the language they use when they communicate. Additionally, our world-leading forensics members are working with the University of Technology Sydney and a pioneering body donation centre to understand how smart devices like phones and watches can help determine how long a body, dead or alive, has been buried during a natural disaster or foul play. It's not as simple as it sounds, because our scientists need to determine how soils, fluids, and other contaminants can affect smart devices, and the data they provide, such as heartbeats or body temperature changes. All of these examples, task forces, operations, and innovation are just a snapshot, a tiny snapshot of what the AFP does every single day. In a perfect world, we'd all be out of work. But unfortunately, the role we perform and the greater footprint we have in the world requires the AFP to be ever present and ready to rapidly take action. I'd like to thank you all for being here today, particularly including the invitees and the AFP members who are in the room. Your goodwill, support, and the confidence you have shown in the AFP is truly valued. I know I've provided a lot of information today, and I know some of it has been challenging to hear. The AFP website will have information for parents and carers and others if they are looking for resources or help on the matters that I have raised today. And finally, I want to reinforce what I said back at the start. The AFP exists to protect Australians. We exist to serve you. We are your AFP. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Commissioner. Looking forward to maybe the Crypto Cracker movie. Russell Crowe, maybe? We'll see. I did want to ask you, though, about unintended consequences. So we've seen with illegal tobacco, for example, part of the reason that's driven that crime has been very high price based on it, which was a health policy that at least in part, facilitated organised crime. So the social media ban for under 16 starts on December 10. There could be kids for the first time trying to access VPNs, and that opens all sorts of other doors. Do parents, as of December 10, December 11, need to be more wary, more vigilant of that possibility for their children if they're under 16?
I would say parents always need to be wary and vigilant. Of course, any initiative that protects young people is something that we support, but it's important to know that that in itself is not enough on its own. So the age verification and the age standards, it is a great initiative, but it's not going to solve the problem on its own. And a big part of that is the ongoing prevention, the ongoing education, and the ongoing reporting. So I think a really important message for parents as we approach the commencement of the social media age ban is that parents need to be having discussions with their children that they still can feel safe to report incidents that are happening online if they are engaging in social media and they are under 16. That's a really, really important message, that kids still know that they can come forward and they can discuss with a safe adult what might be happening to them on social media or online, so that we can obviously take action. So that is a message I would like to send to parents and carers today, those ongoing conversations with your children, making sure that they understand that they can come forward. And, you know, it's sometimes hard for parents to have these conversations in a non-judgmental way, but that is what we're really encouraging, open judgment from parents and carers, because ultimately the goal is to keep the child safe.
Does vigilance include looking at if a child has some form of bank account, presumably, that a parent can see? So it might be a line item or a VPN or something like that. Do they need to be able to maintain that as well, some sort of oversight of that?
I would encourage every family to sit down and have an open discussion about what it looks like for parents to be able to keep their children safe, and what are the mechanisms or the options that are available there to parents. Parents and carers need to know what their child is doing online, and that is a lot harder than it sounds. But even to, you know, where I spoke about the vulnerability of radicalisation online, we see the evidence every day that there are people that are targeting vulnerable young people online, and we see how quickly that radicalisation or that exploitation can happen. So parents need to know who your kid's talking to, what are the security settings, all of those things. And there's some great advice available on the ACE website to support parents and carers. And also an extension of that is, you know, it's a whole of society effort, as I mentioned in the address. So that's educators, it's the health system, it's community leaders, it's the whole protective factor that wraps around a child to keep a child or a young person safe.
First question from the floor, Matthew Knott from the SMH and the Age.
Thank you, Commissioner, for confronting but important address. Sorry. When you spoke before about some of the online networks, some of the sites that have been spoken about as being particularly bad, there are platforms like Discord and Roblox. Would you think there would be a case for them to be included under the social media ban for young people because they're not currently in there? And could you give a bit more advice to parents and children about the most dangerous platforms you think in this space?
Thank you. So I think the question in relation to the platforms is one that's been well traversed with the E-Safety Commissioner and the breadth of work that she's done in preparing for this. So I won't single out particular platforms, but there are many platforms out there, and we see across, you know, multiple platforms this activity that's being carried out online. And I think it goes back to my earlier messaging that, you know, parents really need to know what apps, what platforms, what gaming platforms, what is your child doing online, because, again, as I said, the rapidness of the radicalisation or the exploitation, it can just happen so quickly. And we're talking about, children and young people who they don't have the life experience, you know. Nicely, they're still quite naive about, you know, what the wider world is all about. So we have to be there to protect them, and that means we need to understand. And as I said, again, I point back to the resources. There's a plethora of resources out there to help parents and carers navigate this really, really tricky, complex scenario.
Ellen Ransley from the Courier Mail.
Thanks, Commissioner. I just wanted to ask, do you think that the social media ban will actually help prevent some of the rates of children getting caught up in these, really nefarious corners of the internet? And I also wanted to ask you about AI. You've talked a bit today about the good that the AFP is using AI for, but I wanted to ask how AI is making your work more complicated and whether it's exacerbating any of the issues, especially as you talked about with young people. We know that children are using AI chatbots, for example, that are having overly sexualized conversations with children, encouraging them to commit self-harm or acts of violence. How is AI kind of changing and making those problems worse for you?
Thank you. That's a really important question. So I'll answer the first part first in relation to the social media ban. I think I'll go back to what I said earlier. Of course, we support any initiative that's aimed at supporting and protecting our young people. But again, I just restate, in isolation and on its own, it is not going to solve the problem. There are so many layers and so many protective factors that we need to wrap around. Your question about AI, yes, most certainly I gave some examples of where the AFP has been working with academia and industry around our AI capabilities, and in actual fact there's some that I can't even yet talk about publicly, but needless to say we are doing a lot of engagement, and we have some incredibly smart people in our organisation that it's phenomenal what they're doing, but it does present a challenge and a risk of course as well. Particularly one example around AI generated and AI modified child exploitation material, and the pressure on our members, particularly in the ACE and in our joint anti-child exploitation teams, to try and identify, is this a real child in real time who is being exploited and who we need to take swift action on? Is it an AI generated image, which is still obviously disgraceful, disgusting, and an offence, and we take action. But that's just one example of where, just the complexity and the extra work and the extra pressure on our members to combat these new variations of crimes that are being facilitated by AI technology.
Tessa Conomu from AAP.
Thank you very much for your time today, Commissioner, and congratulations on your appointment. You touched on actors taking advantage of strategic competition. How well placed do you believe democracies are to respond to these tactics, and what role do you envision for the AFP?
Thank you. That's a very important question. I spoke about that in the context of the work that we're doing internationally, so it's an opportunity for me to reinforce the work that we're doing across the Pacific region. Of course, we have been working in very close partnership with our Pacific neighbour countries for many years. We have been a member of the Pacific Island Chiefs of Police since 1975, so our relationships are extremely deep and go back a very long way. There's a common value across the Pacific that we're seeking a peaceful, stable and prosperous region for multiple reasons that go right to the heart of our sovereignty and our democracy and our way of life. So the bonds that we've built over those many years, they're based on mutual respect, they're based on genuine engagement, genuine partnership between the AFP and our Pacific partners. That is something that other countries cannot bring to the Pacific. That is something that gives us a huge advantage. We're trusted partners, and the example being the Pacific Policing Initiative that we are driving. It's Pacific-led, but it's Australian-backed. And it's so incredibly important that we are ring-fencing and bolstering the security and the safety across the whole region, because I think we all understand what the consequences and the impact are if we are not successful in doing that.
Next question, Josh Martin from 7 News.
Thanks for your speech, Commissioner. You talked about supercharging global operations under the new posture. Will you be asking Minister Burke for more funding and more police to make that happen, or will you be shifting resources from domestic operations?
I would love more police and more money. Of course, every police commissioner will say that when they're asked that question. For me, when I talk about supercharging global operations, I'm talking about being really smart, really strategic, really deliberate, really calculated in what are the levers that we have to pull across the region and more broadly across the world. So like the Pacific, we have incredibly deep very close operational, day-to-day operational working relationships with so many countries around the world. So it's supercharging in terms of what's the biggest impact that we could have collectively if we put a threat or a target in the middle and we think about where are all of the levers, the capabilities, the opportunities that we have to have maximum impact, whether that's an arrest and a prosecution, whether it's a disruption, whether it's, there are multiple options and opportunities that we have. That's what I mean when I'm talking about supercharging. It's where we've got members that they're working incredibly smart on targeting exactly the threat and the risk as it's posed to Australia. Do I see us expanding internationally? That is certainly a goal for the medium to long term. And as we see shifts in the operating environment, and we see, additional layers of complexity in how crimes are playing out in this country, absolutely we have to keep assessing our footprint offshore to see where are we getting maximum return on investment. It is a big investment to put a member offshore. So we need to make sure that we've got that right and we're constantly reviewing that.
Thanks very much.
Presumably with the cocaine disruption, you're not able to say this was cocaine destined for Australia. Are they placed where it's more likely to get to Australia, or is it just pure disruption?
Yeah, I think we all know in this country that we've got quite an insatiable appetite for illicit drugs, and a big part of that is the profit margin and the amount that we pay for drugs in this country compared to other countries around the world. And in fact, the source countries, when they hear what we pay for drugs in this country, that they are astounded that's the price that we pay here. So we know that we are a lucrative market. We know that there are multiple routes to get drugs into this country, and that's where we're really talking about, before they get anywhere near our country, what are we doing offshore at the source destination to stop that? So we do need to assume that, a lot of drugs manufactured offshore is destined for our region.
Next question, Jack Quayle from The Australian, and also just announced as the Wallace Brown winner of the Young
Congratulations.
Best Gallery Gem of the Year. Congratulations, Jack. Now you've got to ask a good question.
Congratulations on your appointment to Commissioner, and thank you for your address today. I just want to ask you about the claims from Mossad that the Iranian commander, Sardar Aman, is the mastermind behind this spate of Jewish attacks we've seen, attacks on Jewish sites we've seen across the world, including here in Australia, as you mentioned in your speech. I want to ask if you've been briefed on these claims. Are you cognizant of further attacks occurring, and is the AFP doing enough to counter foreign interference?
Thank you. Very important question. Couple of points I would make there. Of course, we work with many international partners offshore, and we also work very closely with domestic partners here, including our colleagues at ASIO. I will make the point that we still have active investigations underway in relation to some of the examples or elements that you've raised there. So for that purpose, I won't go into a lot of detail, but what I can talk about is the success of our Counter Foreign Interference Task Force, which is co-led with AFP and ASIO. I can't explain to you how incredibly difficult that work is for our members, but how closely we work with our intelligence partners, and we've got matters before court that are still playing out. So again, I won't talk in detail, but to give you assurance that there is a lot of exceptional work that goes on that unfortunately you don't hear a lot about because the very nature of the work is often we are not able to talk about it publicly, but certainly the task force is very busy, and I'll throw a shout out to the Director General there, who has spoken spoken publicly a number of times in his addresses around the threat to this country of foreign interference from various state actors. What we are also seeing in the environment as well is now a blurring of lines between state-sponsored state actors and state-sponsored activity, blurring across organised crime networks in this country. So examples of state actors either tasking or facilitating crime networks to undertake criminal acts in this country, which is causing us to really have another look at how do we combat such a complex blurring of criminal lines.
Thank you. Cheers.
Olivia Casely from the ABC.
Thanks, Commissioner, for your speech. The AFP's work has clearly changed, moving away from sort of counter-terrorism to more of a focus on foreign interference, sovereignty and cybercrime. Can you give us a bit of a sense of how much your caseload has increased, if at all? And I just wanted to pick up on this element of AFP's global operations being supercharged and its expanded mission statement. What do you say to those who see this as an example of mission creep?
Thank you. So the first point I would make, we will never move away from counterterrorism. That is an extremely important part of the work that we do and we have done for many, many years, and we do that very well with our joint counterterrorism teams. So in conjunction with our state and territory partners and ASIO across the country. So that will always be a staple role and remit for the AFP. I think to your question, I very deliberately constructed the new mission statement to pick up, I guess, the changes in the operating environment and the breadth and the role of the AFP in that. So to put defend into the mission statement really calls out, as I've spoken about today, the importance of the work that we're doing in the Pacific to defend our sovereignty and our borders, our work that we're doing across our AUKUS uplift, our role in that, our social cohesion work, that is literally defending the democracy of this country. So that language is very deliberate, and to call out domestic and global threats in that mission statement because, again, as I've said, we are just seeing an overlap. No longer do you see, something happening domestically that is very rare where there is not an international connection or some sort of international link to that. So it was very deliberate to put those words into the mission statement. And our job is, as the AFP, as the environment changes, is to change with the environment. So we continually look at how are we structured, how are we prioritising, how are we making sure that we can have the biggest impact with the resources and the capability and the technology that we have.
Nikki Smith from the AFR.
Thanks for your speech, Commissioner. I just want to come back to what you said about the region facing intense strategic competition. And we're seeing currently in Europe that Europe is facing an intensifying grey zone campaign from Russia targeting critical infrastructure. Are you already seeing a similar scenario of state-sponsored grey zone tactics that are linked to strategic competition in this region, or do you anticipate an uptick of state-sponsored grey zone tactics that would impact Australia? And if so, what kind of tactics, and what role do you envisage the AFP playing in better protecting critical infrastructure?
Sure. We have a critical role to play in that, and particularly, as you term it, grey zone tactics. And we are well equipped across our agency, and also, again, I know I'm talking a lot about partnerships, but this is where our partnerships can really bear fruit in terms of what are our international partners seeing overseas, how can we collectively combat, how can we collectively identify the operating environment as best as we can so we know how to have the biggest impact. So that is all work that has been, that is bread and butter for us now. And, I've spoken about the Counter Foreign Interference Task Force, I've spoken about the work that we do in the Pacific. I guess I just can't overstate enough how much everything is just blurring a across crime types that we would never have seen links or connections. So for us, it means we need to be dynamic, we need to be agile. It means we have to have a look at what does an AFP police officer look like today and going forward. It also means, where are we investing in our tech and capability? As we see more and more threats and as we see the complexity continuing to increase, a big opportunity we have there is making sure that we have got the right tech and the right capability. And when I talk about capability, I mean, that's everything from sophisticated technology and cutting edge tech right through to what we would describe as our old-fashioned, human intelligence collection. So it's a whole spectrum of tools that we need to be able to pull out when the situation dictates, or a combination of all of them.
Thank you.
Next question, Yasmin Al-Wakil from SBS.
Thank you, Commissioner. You have mentioned young women being targeted online, but I'm curious what your investigations have revealed regarding the influence of social media algorithms on boys and young men.
Yeah, so I'll reinforce some of the comments in the speech when we're talking about the sadistic online exploitation and these decentralised networks that are in existence in the online environment. Predominantly, the perpetrators of that are young boys and young men, and the victims are predominantly young women. I think we've all seen in the environment influencers who unfortunately do have a big impact on vulnerable, impressionable young boys, to your question. And again, as I've referred to multiple times today, how quickly we see that pathway to extremist views or radicalisation. Often it will start with, as I've mentioned, it will start with a young person who is maybe a bit disenfranchised or disconnected from their normal sort of social protections and safety systems. We're seeing, particularly since COVID, the increased prevalence of young people spending a lot of time online, and it's just, they're ripe for the picking in terms of these people who want to influence particular extremist views or ideologies. So again, the message for parents is to parents of all children, young men and young boys and young girls, you've got to be so vigilant, because you know how quickly it can happen that a young person is taken down a path of extremism. For us, that is where we really want to work with the community and the consultative board that I've spoken about today, because ideally we're getting to those kids before they even get to a law enforcement investigation. We're getting to them early enough to de-radicalise, to counter the narratives that are being put before them in these echo chambers, so that we don't end up in an investigation, and we don't end up with young people who are that far down a pathway that they actually do have the intent and capability to carry out an act of violence or terrorism.
Caitlin Rintoul from the West Australian.
Thank you for your address, Commissioner. The Albanese government has claimed that they're tightening the FOI laws because one of the reasons is AI bots, foreign actors and criminal gangs flooding the FOI system. Has AFP provided any evidence, documentation or consultation to back those claims by the government? And regarding those foreign actors claims, which nations have those individuals or groups come from who are trying to infiltrate Australia's FOI system? And can you provide any tangible examples of where that has occurred?
Oh, I'm going to give you a Senate estimates answer on that one. I'm sorry, I'll have to take that one on notice. I couldn't stand here hand on heart and
so you're not aware of any examples?
I'm not aware of any advice or information we may have provided to the first part of your question to government, so I would have to come back to you on that one. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Eleanor Campbell from the Canberra Times.
Thank you, Commissioner. You've spoken about the really complex caseload that AFP members are currently facing, and I wanted to ask if you're concerned about the number of officers who are considering quitting due to things like psychological burnout. And if I may, I know this is a matter for the government, but would you potentially support AFP members having the same healthcare entitlements as Defence Force people?
What I can say to that is that last week we were down in Hobart for the Police Commissioners Forum. So all of the police commissioners from around the country, all of the states and territories, and New Zealand Police Commissioner, and recruitment, retention, and psychosocial safety of our members, mental health and support for our members was quite a large part of the agenda. It was an opportunity for us to collectively talk about what initiatives are different states and territories applying, where are they seeing some good results in terms of support for our members. So it was a great opportunity to not just compare initiatives, but also some collective agreement about a way forward so that we can work combine the might of all of our jurisdictions to protect our members, which is, of course, as a commissioner, the most important job that we have. Even just listening to everything I've covered today, it is obvious that policing is a hard job, and it's getting harder because the environment is getting more complex, and it is getting more and more difficult to police. So the importance of us having the right support systems, not just internally within the organisation, but as I said, looking collectively across the country, and that's for retention, as you talked about. How do we ensure that we're protecting our members to have long and healthy careers? But it also goes to the heart of how do we continue to recruit people into law enforcement and make sure that, when I speak at our recruit graduations, it's one of the privileges of the Commissioner to stand up and be part of a recruit graduation, and you've got all of the families there in front of you. These are young men and women whose mums and dads are there, whose husband, whose wife is there, and it's a commitment I make to them that your son, your daughter, your loved one is now part of the Blue family. Trust us to look after them. So there's nothing more important to me than making sure that we do that and we look after our people.
Next question, Melissa Code from the Mandarin.
Hi, thanks for your speech today. I think many people in the room would agree prevention is always better than a cure, but there is also a balance that needs to be struck about how soon groups like law enforcement choose to intervene. In these fast-paced, rapid environments or ecosystems that you describe online, where things can move so quickly before a crime has ever happened, where in your mind is the line drawn about where we should intervene or not?
So I always say that, of course, our first priority is to disrupt as early as we can, and that's obviously to limit any harm, but it's also to give the best opportunity to rehabilitate or de-radicalise or, work with the perpetrator, particularly, as I've been talking about, with young people.
Before they've perpetrated, Commissioner?
Sorry?
Before they've perpetrated anything?
So this is the real importance, as I've spoken about, the education and the prevention. And the more the community understands about what everybody's role is in that. We often say that a lot of the times when law enforcement becomes involved, it's too late, or we've gone too far down the path. We are more and more involved in education and prevention than we have ever been before, and things like the ACE that I've spoken about are an incredibly critical part of that. But again, it's a whole of society effort. I've referred to that in my speech. It's got to be everybody understanding where the threats are, where the risks are, understanding what their role is to play in that. Law enforcement, we certainly cannot solve this problem on our own.
Sarah Basford-Canyalas from The Guardian.
Thanks, Commissioner. And a UN independent inquiry in September found that the Israeli government and military were committing genocide in Gaza. One of its commissioners, former Human Rights Commissioner Krissy, has repeatedly said that Australia has an obligation to look into anyone who's returning from the conflict over the last 2 years. And I just wonder if the AFP has launched any investigations or task force into this matter to see if anyone returning in the last 2 years back to Australia has been involved at all. And just an additional one, do you feel confident the AFP has the expertise to be able to investigate alleged war crimes?
Thank you. So we have a dedicated team or area within the AFP that investigates war crimes. It's within our Special Investigations Command, and those members have undertaken a lot of training in relation to war crimes investigations. War crimes investigations are very complex, very, very difficult for many reasons. But yes, I am confident that we have the tools and we do have the capability where we receive reports of crime or where we identify that there's a need to investigate. We absolutely do, and we will.
And just to confirm, have there been any investigations launched by the AFP?
Do you mean war crimes more broadly, or
specifically relating to this conflict?
Yeah, I will have to confirm for you. I don't want to give you a wrong answer on the spot.
Okay, no worries.
Just before we end, one thing that struck me when you mentioned so-called sovereign citizens was sometimes a loss of trust in policing. Obviously, during COVID, unprecedented restrictions happened on our freedom, just about everybody. How do you try to assure people that might dip their toe in that before being radicalised? Would it be of benefit to, have a mea culpa, to talk about the sort of things we shouldn't do again and that we wouldn't do again as a society in terms of reacting to another pandemic or something else?
Are you talking about reactions to the policies and the settings that were put in place around COVID?
Yeah. Whether it be helicopters on the borders or people, sealed in their homes, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who was based in Melbourne through the entirety of COVID, it was a very difficult time, and I think, I've referred to it in my speech, I think we have seen since COVID that it has had an impact on trust in institutions. Some states and some cities more so than others, and I think you have to accept that is related to some of the COVID settings and policies. And certainly you've used the term sovereign citizens. That is something that also came up at the Police Commissioners Forum last week, where we did have quite a discussion about what are we doing individually, but also what can we be doing collectively to tackle that issue. And of course, we've seen firsthand, some of the extreme ramifications of these so-called sovereign citizens who do declare that they don't recognise authority or institutions. So it is absolutely a priority for the police commissioners, and there's some ongoing work that we are doing around that.
Okay, well, we thank you for your time today. I know you're increasingly keen to get messages out to the media, so we thought we'd give you a National Press Club membership to do that. Ladies and gentlemen, please thank Krissy Barrett.
Thank you.